The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series Doctor Who. And today we're discussing the premiere of the 13th season, featuring the 13th Doctor, called The Halloween Apocalypse. And we'll get into all the other possible names for it in a second. But first, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going, Dom?
Very well, thanks. And Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, before we get started, I want to encourage you to join the StarQuest fan club by texting StarQuest to 66866. Send StarQuest, one word, to 66866. Be sure to stick around to the end of the episode because we definitely have some listener feedback on recent episodes. We want to share that with you. And I also want to share with you another show that's on the StarQuest network that you might like called Racing the Bets. That's a show I do with my wife, Melanie, and I. And if you listen to the recent and upcoming episodes, you'll hear all about the adventures we're having as we are exiled from our home due to damage and just some interesting stuff that's been happening, as well as some cool other stuff, talk about books and movies, and we talk about that sort of stuff too. So check that out at wherever you find fine podcasts or at sqpn.com/bets. That's BETTS. But today we're talking about finally we've received the final season, the third season of the 13th Doctor, which has approached. And so before we get into talking about it, I want to turn to you, Jimmy, and ask if you could give us a recap of this episode.
Okay, spoilers ahoy. This is a big one, an introduction to a 6-part story, so here we go. The Doctor and Yaz are hot on the trail of a dogman named Carvanista. At the moment, they're in an elaborate death trap he set for them, but they get out of it and follow him to Earth. On Earth, Carvanista kidnaps new companion Dan Lewis and takes him into space. Also, something is desperately wrong with the TARDIS, but the Doctor is trying to hide it from Yaz. In the course of the story, we meet other characters at different points in space and time. In 1820, we meet the eccentric Joseph Williamson, who is building tunnels underneath Liverpool. In 2021, we meet Claire, who has already met the Doctor and Yaz, though they don't know her, as they apparently met her in the past. Afterwards, Claire is sent into the past by a weeping angel. We meet a couple of agents from the Division, the Time Lord Secret Ops Force, who are checking on a prisoner known as Swarm. Swarm escapes from his prison and disintegrates the agents. We meet a couple near the Arctic Circle who also appear to be Division agents, but when Swarm shows up, he disintegrates the male agent, and the female agent turns out to be a transformed version of his creepy sister, who he untransforms into her normal creepy form. Swarm also makes telepathic contact with the Doctor and reveals that he is a longtime foe of hers. They have fought many times when she was in the Division before her memory was wiped and she became William Hartnell. We also meet Dan's love interest, Diane, and she is later compelled to go into an old spooky house where she meets Swarm's creepy sister. And we meet an observer in distant space named Vendor. Vendor watches in horror as a phenomenon known as the flux disintegrates 3 planets in the vicinity of his observation station, forcing him to flee. We're told that the flux will destroy massive sections of the universe and may represent the end of the universe. It turns out that the dogman Carvanista and his entire race have been sent to Earth to save humanity from being disintegrated by the flux, so he was actually saving kidnapping Dan, not just kidnapping him. We also learned that the Doctor has been tracking Carvanista because he's the last remaining agent of the Time Lord's Division that she can find, but he won't tell her about the Division. Oh, and we meet some Centaurs who are excited about the coming of the Flux and look forward to having great battles and times ahead. The Doctor manages to help Carvanista's race protect the Earth from the Flux, at least momentarily, but she, Yaz, Dan, and the ailing TARDIS are drawn directly into the disintegrating Flux in an old style cliffhanger ending, the end.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to say right up front, I think Chris Chibnall picked up a variety pack of sewing materials at his local Tesco because he spun out a lot of threads.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I was staring at this thing and kind of in shock, like what more things is he gonna throw at us in one episode?
Well, I had to watch this twice because I watched it the first time and there were so many things going on. It's just twisting up and down and left and right, and it's trying to figure out who's where and who's what, and it, by the second viewing, it got a little clearer, but I like the comment I saw online is this feels like some of the old first part classic Who episodes, just much more manic.
Yeah.
Because there's throwing out so many characters and so many plot threads and so many things that you start to see some merging of the threads, but not a lot. And you have to wait till the second or third part before they finally coalesce into a coherent story. Well, that's kind of what we've got going on right now.
Yeah, This is a lot like an old style Who serial done with modern new Who TV sensibilities. So it's a lot faster paced.
Exactly.
In some ways, it's like Trial of a Time Lord, which was, well...
No, let's not compare it to Trial of a Time Lord.
Well,
it's more like The Key to Time or something.
Okay. Yeah, because Trial of a Time Lord, even though that had a framed narrative that linked them, the stories were separate. I was thinking more along the lines of a whole season is one story line.
Yeah.
I guess.
If except for the TV sensibilities issue, it would be most similar to the War Games, where it's one connected story, or the Daleks master plan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So,
although this does look like there are going to be separate stories, because like we know from the teaser that next week is the Centaurs, and so it looks like each of these threads are going to get a different story. At least that's the way it looks right now with just 2 episodes teased.
I would be surprised if we didn't continue to deal with, because there's more than 6 threads here. So they're going to have to bring some of these together and connect them as we go.
So, snap impressions. My impression was that this is among the most interesting things Chibnall has done during his time. It's a lot better than a lot of his recent stuff. I would give this a 7 or 8 out of 10, which is quite good for Chibnall. Probably a 7 overall, which is quite good for Chibnall. This held my attention. It was interesting. It did not annoy me repeatedly the way he normally does. And it's so fast paced that there was no significant woke nonsense so far. There's a tiny little bit of visual stuff that goes by really fast that you could argue is, kind of subliminal wokeness, but it's only at the subliminal level. It's not in your face hammering it, on your nose.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I agree with Jimmy completely. I mean, if the rest of the season goes like this is setting up, this could be a very good season. Of course, we know it's a 6-part story. This is chapter 1, as it says in the title. But if the rest of the season goes like this story started, this could be, we could be in for a pretty good season.
Yeah. I wonder if it's even more than, in a way, if it's a more than 6-part story, because originally this was planned to be 8 parts, but they then took 2 of the parts and made them specials next year, to which they added a 3rd special for the centenary of the BBC's, its 100th anniversary of broadcasting. But I'm sure they'll give us, it won't be a cliffhanger, or if it will, it will have at least resolved much of the action by part 6. And then I'm wondering if the first two specials were originally conceived as parts 7 and 8 of this, but they were deemed standalone enough that they could be turned into specials.
Well, part 7 is my guess is it's going to be either a Christmas or New Year's special that will be able to stand alone as a holiday special like they've done before. That's my guess.
And I'm not denying that. I'm just saying it may have originally been conceived as a continuation of this story.
Right.
So my impression, well, first I had to turn the subtitles on and start again after about 2 minutes in, because I had no idea what the heck they were saying when they were hanging from the grav bar.
I got them turned on before earlier than that. Yeah,
I had forgot Yes, the Yorkshire accent, or the Sheffield accent is very thick. And so my impression is I'm in agreement with you guys. This was the most Moffat and Russell T Davies ish of the Chibnall era, shall we say. It felt much like what we've expected big fun premieres of Doctor Who in the modern era to be like, and so it's ambitious. That's one thing, is I'm thinking that he's biting off a big chunk, and let's see. Hopefully he can get it all down and give us a whole season that meets this standard. There were good episodes last season. I hate to I don't want to deny that there were some good episodes. The most of the Master stuff was fun.
Yeah, much of the Master stuff was fun. Spyfall Part 1, I thought was really good. Also, Fugitive of the Jadoon was really good.
Yep.
And where we got, those two, to my mind, are the previous best Chibnall episodes, Spyfall Part 1 and Fugitive of the Jadoon. And this felt like that, only it felt like it's setting us up for 6 more, for 5 more episodes like that.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'll see if they can deliver on that.
One thing I want to comment on the accents, it was funny. I found Dan's Liverpudlian accent much easier to understand than the Doctor and Yaz, though. And again, online, I saw people saying, "Well, do non-Brits understand this?" Like, yeah, I understood him fine.
Well, in Dan's case, we have the advantage of being Liverpudlian. We've been listening to the Beatles and the Beatles giving interviews for 60 years, and so we have a little more familiarity with Liverpudlian accents.
And it doesn't seem quite, at least his version of it doesn't seem quite as dense as the Sheffield accents we heard the last 2 years. So
speaking of accents, there was a nice funny moment where the Doctor is wearing, and Yaz are wearing voice activated cuffs, and she's trying to get it to release, and it won't. She's like, maybe I was Scottish when I programmed it, which I think was great.
Yeah, and then she accidentally later says the word relief, and they come off.
Yeah, that is totally, everyone who's ever used Siri or Alexa or any of those things knows that is exactly what's going to happen with voice activated.
I think Alexa is getting worse. I don't know what they're doing, but Alexa is not responding to my voice commands as well as she used to.
Yeah. That's a whole discussion on secrets of tech we should have someday.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to talk about Carvanista, specifically the actor who plays as Craig Ells, who was there was a mini-sode at the end of the New Year's episode this year that introduced Dan and his friend reading him his horoscope. That's actually the actor who plays Carvanista under all the dog makeup. I'm sorry, Carvanista, the Lupari. It's not really a dog. Don't call them dogs.
It's a dog. Don't worry. He's a dog man. He's not the Michigan dog man. He's the space dog man.
Yeah, right.
And there's a long tradition of that. I used to read a comic book that was a lot of fun called Dalgoda, which was about a dog man from space. And if you spell Dalgoda backwards, it's a dog lad.
No, that's good.
Funny.
That's good. Yeah, and of course the race Lupari brings to mind lupi. The word that's the root for
wolf.
Wolf. Thank you.
Lupus.
Yep. Lupus. That's right.
I will say they did a really good job on his makeup CGI. I'm assuming it was makeup, but they did a pretty good job. It looked really good.
I wanted to comment on that too. It was really good makeup, and one of the things I liked about it was they paid attention to a lot of stuff. Like if you look at his teeth. When he's got his mouth open under his mustache, they're not human teeth. They look like little dog teeth. And also he's got facial muscles that work. Yeah. So his dog face changes its expression. I'm not sure how they did that, whether it was mechanical or built into the applique or a result of the applique over human facial muscles, or if it was CGI. But at times, he'll wrinkle his face in a way that looks like how dogs do it.
Yeah.
And that was impressive. I also like how when he first meets Dan, Dan assumes he's a guy in a Halloween costume. And he's commenting on the Halloween costume and is like poking him. He's like stroking his fur and booping him on the nose and stuff. And it's that shows confidence, because if they didn't have confidence in the makeup, they wouldn't let the actor poke at it on camera.
No, that's true. That's true. And I like the design of it, because it's like Dan says, it's a cute dog. And it kind of is at war with how Carvanista acts and talks, and so as a regular 21st century people, we see a cute dog, we're like, oh, a cute doggy. No, and so I like that contrast. Yes, I like that contrast. And speaking of makeup, they did a really good job with Swarm as well. Like they did some close-ups on his mouth, with the teeth, like again with the teeth and stuff, and they're really paying close attention to that.
This is something they did, something that I was kind of watching for with Swarm. Growing up, I would watch, Doctor Who and other sci-fi shows where they'd show us aliens. The aliens would have, unusual skin colors, which was always interesting. But then I'd look at their mouths, and in their mouths, they have white teeth and red flesh.
Yeah.
And it's like, guys, swish some food color around or something, I mean, give me something other than, why does every race in the universe have red inside their mouths? I mean, even Mr. Spock with his green blood, he's got red inside his mouth. Yep. So they did something with Swarm. I don't know. I suspect they did it in CGI color correction. But they changed the inside of his mouth so that it's not red. It looks like blue, like a lot of his exterior skin does.
I kept calling him like the worst Thanos, because he kept turning people to dust, except he wants to do it to everyone and not just to half the universe. We did get a Nitro 9 mention right there in the beginning, by the way, which was nice. The Doctor using Nitro 9 on Carvanista's droid bots, or whatever she called them.
He must have left some in the TARDIS.
or at least the formula.
Yeah, the formula. So I guess we could talk a little bit about each of the threads. Let's start with the Liverpool one, because that was the shortest thread. We got the least from that. So it's Liverpool 1820. This Williamson guy,
one. Okay,
is digging obsessively for something or some reason.
Okay, so here's the deal about him. Now, Joseph, they just called him Mr. Williamson in this episode. They didn't even give us his first name, but his first name is going to be Joseph, because Joseph Williamson was a real guy. He lived in the late 1700s and first half of the 1800s. He was a rich eccentric, which means, as it put it in American terms, he was a rich weirdo. And he was a lot of different aspects of his life were weird. I mean, he described his marriage to his wife as a cat and dog relationship. He at one point let loose all the birds in his wife's aviary and opined that it would be great if humans had wings and we could just fly away from our problems. But he also obsessively built tunnels under Liverpool, and he would hire people and bring them in, all these workmen, and he would have them building these tunnels, and no one knew what it was for, and no one still knows what it's for. And so what was particularly fascinating to me, now I've talked about this on Catholic Answers Live, I've talked about this on Mysterious World. I often find it happens to me an anomalous number of times where I'll be learning about something really obscure within a day or two of being asked about it, or when it becomes relevant. Well, guess what? Earlier this week, I learned of the existence of Joseph Williamson, and I thought he was so interesting, I put him on the list of the big list of future topics for Mysterious World. And I had his Wikipedia page open, but I didn't read it for several days until like Friday, and I finally read his page, and then on Sunday, wham, here's Joseph Williamson in Doctor Who.
That's awesome.
And he's apparently not even that well known in England, because I was watching a British guy who was reviewing this episode, and he's like he was a former one of the What Culture guys, so they kind of are fairly knowledgeable about stuff and look into stuff, but even he didn't know who Williamson was. He referred to him as, quote, some dude building tunnels, close quote. And it's like, wow, I had no idea that Joseph Williamson was going to be in this.
That's
so
like,
might move up the list pretty quick.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to talking about the real Williamson. But in this, he's telling this interlocutor, this guy he's talking with, who's like, you've lost your rationality, but he says he's doing it because of the cataclysmic. For like, something cataclysmic is coming, and therefore he's building these tunnels for that purpose. My guess is maybe that's going to play into the 2021, the in Liverpool, and Dan, because Dan's in Liverpool, and something along those lines. And Dan, we know, knows a lot about Liverpool history because he's pretending to be a docent at the Museum of Liverpool against the rules. And so I have a feeling that those tunnels are going to come into play in the future.
They obviously will, because they put Williamson not in the preview, but at the end they brought him back in a montage. Yeah, and also Claire got transported into the past by a weeping angel. She may have gone to 1820.
Oh, well, and Diane, her last scene, she's standing in water, but it looks like she's underground. It doesn't look like she's outside, so she might be in one of those tunnels.
Oh,
when she got drug into that house against her will.
Okay. All right, so that's the Liverpool 1820. So let's talk a little bit about Dan. And as I mentioned, he's
fun guy so far.
So in the mini-sode, the mini episode that was released only online, or no, I'm sorry, it aired after the New Year's special. He looks like a workman, some type of like carpenter,
blue collar guy.
Yeah, some sort of skilled tradesman. In this, he's perhaps unemployed. He's working in a food bank and doesn't have anything in his own house, any food in the fridge, and
is too proud to bring food home from the food bank even when it's offered to him.
Right.
Now I've seen some people say he's unemployed, and that's not clear. Right. He is pretending to be a docent, and as actually before that was revealed, as soon as I saw him leading this party of tourists around the Liverpool Museum, I said, he's faking it. He's just pretending to be a docent. That's what I would do if I was the writer. And that turned out to be the case. But then when he's talking to his love interest, Diana, she tells him, you've got a trade, do that.
Right.
So that sounds like he may not be completely unemployed. Just for some reason, he's not doing what he could be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. That's good. Yeah.
He could be some kind of contractor who's just not taking up contracts, basically.
Yeah. Right. That's interesting. Okay. So then Dan ends up, like we said, running into Carvanista. The Lupari are species bonded to humans.
Yeah, this was a great idea, and they're doing species recall, meaning they've been sent to get us so that we won't be on Earth when the danger hits.
So each one of us has a guardian dog.
Yeah. Yes.
That would be interesting.
So instead of man's best friend, we're dog's best friend?
Right. Well, because when they said there's 7 billion Lupari ships coming, I'm like, oh, are they doing the whole, like, we can't have 100 ships. It has to be billions of them, the whole overdoing it. But when they said there's one Lupari and one ship per human being on Earth, if you look at it too closely, there are massive holes in that idea. I mean, killing Yaz would leave one Lupari unbonded with Yaz. What happens to that Lupari? Do they, and when how many human beings are born every minute? That sort of thing. All right, whatever. So we don't look too closely at it.
Just technology, dude.
That's right. Wave a hand. It's Doctor Who. So I did like that. They took he takes him prisoner, and it's good because it's a sort of antagonistic relationship. Like I'm species bonded to you, but that doesn't mean I have to like you. And I kind of like that.
And in addition to not having to like you, it's not just a bond, but it's like their honor to be able to do this for humans.
Right. There is.
I also just love the way Carvanista handles himself at times. Like so Dan, still thinking this is a human, is telling him he's going to report him for kidnapping. and that's dumb. If you've ever been kidnapped, you never tell the kidnapper you're going to report them for kidnapping. In fact, you say the opposite if the subject comes up, but you don't bring it up. Because your job is to get out of there, and giving them a reason to kill you, like telling them you'll report them, is not what you want to do in that situation. But Dan does it, and Carvanista is like, well, yeah, that's what I'm doing. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Go right ahead. Report me. And see, what was the other thing I wanted to say about Carvanista? Oh, he shrunk Dan's house using a miniaturizer. Is it the Master's miniaturizer? That's what I wonder.
And then at some point, I'm sure the Master is going to be showing up in the next either this year or in the specials. And I don't know if there's a connection there or not. There may be a different connection to the Master that has occurred to a bunch of fans that maybe I'll save till later in the show so people can listen to more of it before a potential spoiler, even though it's just speculation at this point.
Sure.
But remind me by the end of the show, so we give the audience closure on that if they want to know it. But I love how, even though Dan may not be unemployed, he is now homeless.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, no, he's got his home. Well, it's in his pocket.
You can't live in it.
From a certain point of view, young Padawan.
He's kind of homeless like Dom is right now, where he can't live in his home right at this moment, just for different reasons.
I could just be with it.
Yeah, I got to kick. I mean, the very beginning, when we first meet Carvanista, even though he's like a hologram, I mean, the traps that he sets up for the Doctor, he's like, I'm going to make sure the Doctor dies. Doctor and Yaz dies. So they're sitting on like this gravity plate over a pool of ocean of acid.
Hanging from a gravity bar.
Yeah, hanging from a gravity bar.
Upside down.
They're handcuffed. It's going to release them in less than a minute. And if they do somehow happen to avoid that, he's got his little droids that are going to shoot them.
Killbots.
Which, by the way, they shoot about as badly as stormtroopers, but still. But it's just like, okay, he knows too well. The Doctor's going to try to escape from this. Let's just try to make it impossible. Yeah. Spoiler. They escape.
And the sun's going to go nova.
Yeah. That's right. And the planet's going to get destroyed in 5 minutes anyway. So if they do escape from that.
Okay. But it's typical Bond's villain setup, which is, or, stay with me now, have the killbots just shoot them while they're hanging from the thing and just kill them.
Yeah.
And then let them drop.
Yeah. But then they get out of it and they do it on screen and it makes sense. And so that's what I liked about it.
Yeah.
I also liked how after Carvanista's hologram disappears after telling them about the death trap, the Doctor says, well, I can't help but feeling this is partly my fault. And Yaz is like, it is all your fault.
Yeah.
And then she lists the ways in which it's the Doctor's fault.
Right.
And so we see Yaz. We should talk about Yaz.
Yeah.
Yaz is standing up to the Doctor much more than we have ever seen before. Yaz has learned a lot. She's able to, she's like now a lot of the companions over time become like little doctors in that they can handle aspects of what's going on without the Doctor holding their hands. And, we saw that with Ace. We saw that with Amy, and we've seen it with others where they like start to learn how to do some stuff with the TARDIS, and they learn how to use the sonic screwdriver and things like that. And they can anticipate and plan for, if this happens, then we do this. Mm-hmm. And so Yaz is now moved into that little Doctor role where she's able to do some stuff competently without being given detailed instructions by the Doctor. And so I like seeing that increased companion competence, but at the same time, just like she and Graham and Ryan were starting to stand up to the Doctor with all her secretiveness. Mm-hmm. By the time they left, Yaz has continued that. And she's very aware of what the Doctor is being secretive about. She knows the Doctor has wanted to find Carvanista for some reason that she's not telling Yaz, and it's because Carvanista is a division agent, and the Doctor wants to learn about the division, and so apparently the Doctor is still hiding all this timeless child stuff from Yaz. And also then when the TARDIS springs an oil leak, Yaz, it pretty clearly understands this is something really wrong here, and the Doctor is trying to shrug it off and say, oh no, the TARDIS is fine, I'm fine, we're all fine. And Yaz isn't buying that.
Right.
And so Yaz is standing up to her a lot more, which I like, because it makes Yaz more of an agent and less of a victim.
Exactly.
Right. She's apparently now calling herself former PC Yasmin Khan. Like she's moved into the TARDIS full time. That's a clearly what's happening. Yeah, and they're much more equals. Like that's one thing that kind of characterizes the 13th Doctor is a much more of an equal footing between the companion and the Doctor. I mean, that's was from the beginning, from the first season.
Yeah, only totally hypocritically. Because she's has a much, I mean, she talks about having a much more horizontal structure in the TARDIS, but no, she's keeping secret. She's putting on the veneer of treating companions more like equals, but actually she's keeping them way at arm's length.
Right. Yeah, but she's having these visions of Swarm, this figure that supposedly they fought, millennia ago or whatever, but that she doesn't remember because, of course, it's been wiped from her memory, and she's not telling Yaz anything about it. She's not saying there's this figure. I don't know who this is. I don't know where he's coming from, but so she's doing her MOT checkup, which it's a phrase that those of us in the United States might not be familiar with. It's Ministry of Transportation. It's inspections of vehicles. So basically she's getting her vehicle, her mind checked up to see what's going on, try to figure out what's going on with this Swarm.
So let's talk about Swarm now that we bring him up. We start with she's got this psychic link. He's specifically showing her his escape from this prison called the Burnished Rage Battleground, I think they called it. Yeah,
and I wondered about that name. I kind of snagged on it because it's a great name, Burnished Rage Battleground. But I think I'm of two minds about. I don't think the audience is going to understand. Much of the audience is not going to understand that name. And I wonder to what degree Chris Chibnall devoted conscious thought to that, because burnish, it sounds like burned, and that's how most people take it. So if you talk about a burnished rage battleground, you're thinking like, something that's been set on fire. It's like like a burned forest or something. But that is not at all what the word burnished means. Burnished means polished.
Right.
And actually polished rage sounds really interesting. There was some polished rage that led to this battle on this ground, but I wonder how much Chibnall is expecting the audience to understand that name or think or misunderstand it.
Interesting.
Yeah, it does kind of sound like one of those names they like to throw out that sound smart, but really just kind of a bunch of words they threw together.
Yeah.
I mean, burnished rage, if you know what the word means, it is an interesting concept. Like the idea of someone has been, it's almost like
polishing their grudge,
stewing in
exactly.
it. Like burnishing has this idea of not just cleaning something, but of making something more.
Making it shine.
Right. Getting it more ornate or more visible or more of itself. So, yeah. So Swarm has apparently been held as a prisoner from the dawn of time, from the dawn of the universe.
Well, they say the agent who says that mentions that they exaggerate, though.
Right. So, but for a very long time anyway. And he has apparently been biding his time, waiting for them to show up so that he can escape and turn them to dust. Then
he also, when he absorbs the energy from the first Time Lord agent, division agent he kills, there's this physical transformation that occurs, and his voice changes too. And he says, "Renewed at last."
Yep.
And that was the original word for regeneration.
Yeah.
In Patrick Troughton, when Patrick Troughton came in, he didn't say I've been regenerated. He said I've been renewed. And I'm wondering if there is a Timeless Child connection here. With because we see his sister similarly in a different form where she looks human before her true form is revealed, and obviously him and his sister have history with the Time Lords, and so I'm wondering what the connection is here. And I don't know what it is, but I'm thinking there may be one.
It's almost like regeneration. In other words, it's what he goes through is. Although you don't have the the Artron radiation and all that sort of stuff.
Right. Well, he's got a different kind of effect that they show, kind of like particles coming off of the person he's absorbing.
Yeah.
But yeah, because before he had that, he took on that agent. He looked very gaunt, very
skeletal.
Skeletal. Yeah, and very weak. And whether or not that was part of that was the act that he was putting on to, like, oh, you've got me, I can't do anything. Oh, wait, you're wrong. I can. Yeah. Or if that was just, again, like you said, it was a regeneration, whether or not it's regeneration as the Time Lords understand it, or if it was more of a renewal,
What do you think is the connection between Flux and Swarm?
Well, the obvious one, and I don't know if they'll go with the obvious one, but from a writing perspective, the obvious one is he is unleashed it or in league with it, or it's somehow he and the Flux have the same goal. Now, it's possible that he's in direct control of it, but it's also possible that he's not. He may be allied with it, because after all, he's just one guy. I mean, he's got his sister, but he's one guy. It's kind of like the Master. The Master is just a guy. He's a madman with a box, and so he constantly needs to ally himself with more powerful forces, which is why we see the Master being allied with the Autons and the Daleks and the Cybermen and all these other villains over time. And so they portray Swarm as if he's kind of like the Doctor's original master, because he refers to how you and I have this special relationship and we've fought so many times and now it's our last dance and stuff. But he's still just one guy. So presumably he's been involved in master-like plots before with the Doctor.
Right. Let's talk about
by the way, just one little thing I noticed, and I don't know if this is intentional or not, and it may not mean anything, but if you look at the asteroid that he's held on, it looks like a Cyberman head made out of stone. I mean, it's not perfect, but it looks like a really aged, like it's visually evocative of a Cyberman head.
Okay. Okay.
It was to me anyway.
Okay. That is interesting. So let's talk about the couple living in the Arctic Circle. So it turns out Earth is a nice repository for Time Lords to hide people, because just like Future of the Jadoon, we have a Time Lord hiding with another person, although this time not a Gallifreyan, but she's apparently had her memories removed. She doesn't know who she actually is, just like Ruth. And
this couple, as soon as I saw them, I said, "This is like Ruth and what's his name?"
Yeah.
You have a dominant black woman with a subservient white man living by themselves in a constructive relationship. They have a positive relationship, and then it turns out then it seemed confirmed when this alien probe thing shows up and apparently summons them for something. And the lady, who I don't think we ever get the names
Anna
of these.
Anna when she's human looking, and Azure, the blue.
Okay. Yeah. Well, they don't use that name on screen.
It's in the credits, but yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So Anna then smashes the guy says, "Oh, well, we were told this would never happen except in case of extreme necessity or extreme emergency." And she says, "We didn't get the warning," and smashes the probe.
Right.
And so they're totally setting us up for these are former division agents. and then it turns out it's more like witness protection or or something like that. Why they wouldn't just imprison Azure like they did her brother Swarm, I don't know.
Right.
But maybe she, like, I don't know, maybe she wasn't as bad as him or something. But I do like that after he's killed her companion guardian guy, he's about to she thinks he's about to disintegrate her, and she says, why is it in my mind to say thank you?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's just her subconsciously remembering her real relationship with Swarm and subconsciously understanding what he's about to do. What I don't understand, consciously or subconsciously, is if this is Halloween and we're in the Northern Hemisphere and this is the Arctic Circle, why is it daylight instead of dead of night?
Right. Yeah, at any point, yes. That's true. The Time Lords have apparently changed their philosophy at some point on capital punishment, because, if Swarm is this dangerous, I mean, they were going to execute the Fifth Doctor. Was it the Fifth Doctor for crimes that were apparently much less than whatever Swarm has done. But it's interesting. Maybe they can't kill him or something. But
well, even when they did the Fifth Doctor, they said that they hadn't executed someone in centuries. That had been such forever since they've last done it.
That's
so
true.
It's not something they do often.
Yeah. Okay. So that's that couple. There's not a whole lot more to say about them. We talked a little bit about Claire, who, again, timey-wimey, has apparently met Yaz and the Doctor already.
Well,
in her past.
I get the feeling, though, the way she kind of talked about it, where she is going to have met the Doctor, where it was her future. She knows that in the future she's going to meet the Doctor. It hasn't happened yet for her either, because there's some weirdness about the way she phrases it about how I'm going to meet this person. I wasn't expecting it to be today.
Oh, okay.
But because she said something about if I know my past. If the
Doctor has not met her, so when the Doctor does meet her in Claire's past, she'll probably say, we're eventually going to meet on at some point.
Yeah.
And that might explain why she's saying it like that.
There's some wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey going on with this.
And I like that. And I like how I like how they don't make a bigger deal out of it than they do. Because on a time travel show, meeting people out of sequence should happen all the time.
More than it does.
And more than it does. And we're finally starting to see that. I mean, they've had little bits of it in Classic Who, the most notable bit of which was the arrival of Melanie Bush, where the Doctor hadn't met her at the time they met, and she was the original companion from the future. But then they very quickly dropped that and didn't explore any of the potential for Melanie as the companion from the future. And then in New Who, River Song, where they really explored that and paid it off. And now that they've done that, meeting people out of sequence should settle into the background of the show. It should be something that happens periodically, and normally it's not a big deal. But occasionally it may be.
I wonder if Claire is going to be the 14th Doctor's companion. Although she recognizes Yasmin. But
well, they could do that, but I don't know that they will.
Interesting. Yeah. But she has apparently run into the Weeping Angels before, because she recognizes it and knows what to do. She says, don't blink, and the whole thing, except when she does.
Yep, exactly.
And that means we've got the Weeping Angels involved somehow, for some reason, chasing her down. So we've got Weeping Angels, we've got Centaurs. Maybe in the next 5 episodes, we'll see Daleks and Cybermen too.
I think there has been said that they are going to have Daleks and Cybermen coming later too, as part of this whole flux as the universe breaks down. It's going to start, and there's a 3D game that you can get now that it involves that you're someone who's helping the Doctor and you're facing Cybermen and all this.
A VR game, yeah.
Yeah, it was not just VR. It's just a regular first person type game that I think you can play VR.
Yeah.
But it's kind of one of those myth type games where you got to run around and collect things and do this and that to help the Doctor and all that. Yeah, obviously it's not canon, but it might be fun to play. But I think it ties into all of this. It shows another view of what's going on with all of that going on this storyline. Now with Claire, there's been, again, looking at what people are kind of speculating online, is that she's being sent back to 1820. Now we don't know this for sure. We don't know where she was sent, because all we saw her was kind of in a wooded area or a grassy area, but we don't know beyond that exactly where she's at. So she might have been sent back to 1820 Liverpool, or she could be another threat at another time.
Yeah, that's right. There's and that's about all we get from Claire. There's not a whole lot more. I mean, she kind of talks a little bit about, I didn't expect to even come this way, and I'm not sure why I run into you. So there's a sense of there's a fate or something directing her steps. So then let's talk about Observation Outpost Rose, which is an interesting choice of a name.
Obvious wink to the audience there. That's clearly a bit of fan service. Right.
And then there's this guy on board called Vinder, who is, I guess he's a recurring character a step above all of the other parts of this. Like he's he's a little bit more like a companion than he is like the rest of them, like Claire and Diane. So I think
from what we've been led to believe, although he hasn't even met the Doctor yet.
Right. So he's on this.
What's the name of the guy? What's the name of the main character in Red Dwarf?
I've never watched Red Dwarf.
Oh, it's like Linder. It's been a year since I watched it.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull it up. It may take me a minute. Lister. Okay, so this guy reminded me of Vinder. Reminded me of him.
Huh.
Yeah,
because he's this single guy out on a spaceship by himself, keeping himself entertained in a really boring environment with talking to the ship's systems and things like that. He just needs a cat.
Yeah, exactly.
Or he's like a guy on an orbiting satellite thing, watching old movies with his robots.
Yeah. But his dialogue is interesting. As he's making his report, he's talking about how nothing is happening, and he's saying it in a very professional, businesslike way. But you can tell from what he's saying that nothing has happened like ever in his tenure here. And then he pivots to talking about, on the other hand, he gets to see all this cool stuff, and he starts talking about how grateful he is that almost nobody gets to see stuff like this. And then as he's signing his report, as always, I wish you to go to hell.
But then something finally happens, and the Flux shows up, and he ejects just in time from the observation post and gets away. Although, I wonder, is the Flux like a wave passing through the universe, or we don't know. We don't know what it is.
We don't know yet.
Visually, it is a wave of stuff that I mean, it looks like it's made out of matter. Now who knows what they're going to say.
Yeah.
But it looks like it's this chaotic sort of cloud-like
energy ribbon.
Thing that disintegrates whatever it comes into contact with.
Right. So we see briefly, like you mentioned, Jimmy, the Centaurs. There's not a whole lot to say about them here because we're going to see them in the next episode.
They're 30 trillion light years away, we're told.
Yeah.
And this is, I don't know if this, since they don't normally tell us how far we are away, I don't know, but this is like the farthest away they've ever said. 30 trillion light years is way over the cosmic horizon. Okay. We cannot see that far. The universe is like 90-something billion light years away, and this is 3 orders of magnitude beyond that.
Right. So outside the known universe. That would be interesting. I wonder if it's just an error. That would be interesting if they're trying to do something with that.
Mm-hmm. I liked the conversation between the Centaurans, because one of them is some kind of psychic explorer, and he's sussed out what's happening with the Flux, and when his hologram first appears to make his report to the Centauran leader, the Centauran leader notices that you look terrible. And he says, well, yes, my task has drained and withered me, and your appearance is hideous. It's like, yes, no need to dwell on that point. Your appearance is very hideous.
Disgusting. Thank you. I know. So the doctor ends up confronting Carvanista as a division agent, which I think is very interesting, given that till this point we kind of assumed that the division was all Time Lords. So apparently they're recruiting outside the Gallifreyan race. So interesting.
Maybe.
Yep, perhaps. And that she did not know that there were other division operatives. She calls them the last division
operative. Could find alive.
Right. But there were others on Earth, and may even still be more, which would be interesting. But no, we don't get a whole lot there. So, I mean, is there... I don't know if we missed anything. I think we covered everything. But Jimmy, you said you had something you wanted to say about the Master, too. So I don't know if you want to do that now.
Before we do that, why don't we do our closing notes? Father Cory, did you have anything else you wanted to mention?
Well, one thing we see is when the swarm is, or the flux is chasing the TARDIS, the Doctor unleashes the vortex energy from the heart of the TARDIS, and of course that's going all the way back to the final episode of season 1,
right?
Where Rose absorbs that. So another Rose connection. Now, as far as I know, that that's as far as the connection goes.
Yeah.
Let's hear. Was there something else? Oh, Dan Lewis calls himself an official Scouse. Well, Scouse is the term for the Liverpudlian accent, but it's also kind of a term for a person from Liverpool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Kind of the common term for it, if you will, where so he's kind of saying, I'm just an average Liverpudlian. I'm just, and I'm going to be the official one for your museum. So that was a term I hadn't heard before. It's kind of an interesting term. And then just kind of my final impression is, like I said at the beginning, there's going to be a lot of threads that they're going to tie together, and if they keep going, first of all, the pace this episode went, it's going to be a very tiring season,
right?
But very good one. This could be one of the best seasons. It has the potential to be one of the best seasons of New Who, if it keeps going the way this episode did. But we'll have to wait and see. Chris Chibnall's shown the ability to pull defeat from the jaws of victory. So,
right. I actually had one more note that I wanted to mention that I forgot to bring up was the TARDIS doors. So among the TARDIS's problems right now, including the leaky oil, is the door. Like it keeps spawning new doors in different places, including the floor at one point. Something is definitely up with the TARDIS. Something is messing with it. So I think that's interesting. So Jimmy, what did you have to?
Let's see. So one note on their escape from the death trap, which I like how they escape, because they do it piece by piece, and each of the pieces makes a kind of sense, and so I like that. At one point, the gravity bar they're hanging from snaps in two, and we have this moment that is deliberately evocative of Quidditch.
Yeah,
where it looks like they're flying on mechanical broomsticks of a sort. I like how when Carvanista shows up and he's trying to get Dan to go with him when he's confronting him in his house, we have a Jedi mind trick moment where he waves his hand and it's like, you will not resist, you will come with me, and Dan, you will do exactly what I say. And Dan says, I don't think I will. And he tries it again. It's like, you will not resist, you will do exactly what I say. It's like, no, I don't think so. And so he's apparently got a device on his wrist. So this is how the Lupari are planning to take humans. They've got a wrist device that allows them to do Jedi mind tricks to get the human to come along willingly. But Carvanista's is not working. And to figure that out, he sniffs at it. Which is what a dog would do. If a dog is trying to figure something out, they sniff at it because they're primarily olfactory creatures rather than visual creatures like us.
Right.
So I thought that made a lot of sense. It was just a little throwaway thing. I don't know if it was in the script or not, but it was a great choice, and I liked seeing that.
That's good.
So for some time, or at least a while in fandom, based on photographs from the set, there has been a rumor that the TARDIS is dying. And that seems to be confirmed here because there's something seriously wrong with the TARDIS. They're going to have to build that into a major plot thread and resolve it. One of the speculations in fandom has been that the Doctor will end up going back to old Gallifrey to try to find something to save the TARDIS. But I don't know that they need that because she's already on the hunt for the division, and the division is from old Gallifrey.
Right.
So there's that. I do think, though, that if they're going to have something seriously wrong with the TARDIS like this, they need to make it fairly big in the story, because the TARDIS is the Doctor's oldest and first companion.
Yep.
Right.
And the threat of losing the TARDIS needs to have emotional weight for the Doctor. So even though the Doctor needs to save the TARDIS in the end, we need to see her go through what it would be like if she saw the death of a companion coming.
Right. That's true.
Now, speaking of TARDISes, Dan says something very interesting when he first gets on board the TARDIS. They're in a run for your life situation, and so they don't have time for him to stop and wonder. And the Doctor and Yaz explain to him really quickly what the TARDIS is and note that it's bigger on the inside. And Dan seems oddly unimpressed. And then he says the very interesting thing. I had a mate who had one of these. I think his was a bit bigger, actually.
That's right.
Well, that's a line that could pay off in some very interesting ways.
Right.
And the Doctor then turns to him and says, by the way, here's your house, giving him the miniaturized house. And so it's like, we've got master vibes going on here.
Yeah.
Also, so they've released footage like in the trailer that the Cybermen are definitely coming back. And it's going to be the warrior type, the cyber warrior type ones, not the cyber masters that we saw last time. It's apparently been written that the Daleks are coming back, and apparently Graham is coming back.
Interesting.
I don't know how much, but he's apparently coming back, and there's even been some hint that Ryan might too. Now that could just be like cameos for the regeneration episode,
right?
But apparently we're going to see him again. So those are my notes. Now, the master theory. Pun intended. Okay, so Swarm is a very interesting character who apparently is a lot like the Master. We know that the Master has a tendency to be introduced in these shows under another guise, usually played by whoever the actor is that's playing the Master. But in this case, Swarm is not played by Sacha Dhawan. However, Swarm is a lot like the Master, and often the name of the character that is eventually revealed as the Master is like based on the word Master, or is an anagram of something, like Harold Saxon. Mr. Harold Saxon is an anagram of Master Number 6, or things like that. So people have been thinking about, okay, we've got all of these recurring villains. We've got Centaurs, we've got Weeping Angels. There's something coming up called the Ravagers that may or may not be the same as Swarm and his sister. Swarm, S, Centaurs, W-A, Weeping Angels, R, Ravagers. Who could M be?
Interesting.
And so I wouldn't put it past him to say Swarm is a version of the Master, and that'll eventually be revealed. And the fake out is deeper this time by having a different actor play the pre-reveal character who may eventually turn into Sacha Dhawan. And that would then establish more parity between the Doctor and the Master because they have a deeper history, both of them, than their current lives. Remember how Sacha Dhawan was all torn up about the fact that since regeneration came from the Doctor as the timeless child, there's a little bit of the Doctor in him, and he hates that. Well, they might keep that, but renewed again. Maybe he's got a deeper history too, and that establishes the two of them, that elevates the Master again to being the Doctor's true Moriarty instead of just some Time Lord that took a dislike to her.
Interesting. That would be, yeah. I mean, I was thinking along the lines of the Swarm and the Master, Swarm maybe being a form of the Master at some point.
Mm-hmm. I personally, first of all, I hope if they do bring the Master back, if Swarm ends up being the Master or the Master ends up being involved with Swarm, that it is Sacha Dhawan. I would be very disappointed if they don't bring that actor back, because I thought he did a masterful job, pun intended, as the Master.
Sacha Dhawan's definitely coming back at some point.
But I unfortunately, knowing some of the writing like Chris Chibnall and company do, that the easy route would be to make that, yes, Swarm is actually the Master. I'd like to see Swarm be a different bad guy from before the whole timeless child thing. If nothing else, that gives the excuse to bring back Dr. Ruth as well.
Yeah, right. I don't have an indication of her coming back this season, but I would love it.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't want to see them say, well, Swarm is really the Master, but I do like the idea of the acronym saying that the Master will be returning one way or the other. Yeah. And again, if it's Sacha Dhawan, that'll be fantastic. That'll be amazing.
Interesting. Well, we'll see. This is like, as we said at the top, this was a epic beginning of this season of Doctor Who. So we're looking forward to what's coming next time. I mean, if the length of our conversation is any indication, we've talked for an hour about this so far, and so it's looking good. All right, I did promise some listener feedback, so let me get to that now. From our recent episode 249 on the Enemy of the World, that's the second Doctor story, Ted sent in an email. He said, every time I watch a second Doctor serial, I think that Patrick Troughton has the looks of Mo Howard and the voice of Clarence the Guardian Angel from It's a Wonderful Life. You're not alone on that one, Ted. This was a fun serial.
I see the Mo Howard thing, but I haven't watched It's a Wonderful Life recently enough to have a feel for the Clarence's voice.
It's more of the style of speaking, I think, that might be part of it. Yeah, he's got that way of talking. He says, this was a fun serial. I always like the chemistry between Jamie and Victoria. It seems like there's a lot of affection between the characters. And then lastly, like you all, or y'all for Jimmy, I liked that there is, I enjoyed Astrid's character. That's what he said. I like the way that Dom beat around the bush and finally said, and she's very attractive. I mean, I didn't want to make that the first thing that I say about her. That would be shallow. Even though I was tempted to. I think from now on, you should just get right to the point, and to use one of Jimmy's phrases, she has dad appeal. Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
I based on this feedback, I actually used that in a recent Doctor Who review. Although I don't know that it's come out yet. It may come out after this season.
Yeah.
Right.
I just think it's something my dad and my brothers and I used to do is whenever we'd be going somewhere and there would be an attractive young lady and we'd all turn our heads to look, we'd look at each other and go, I think I went to school with her. That's why. So that has become the phrase now. I think I went to school with her for an attractive young lady. So good. Thank you, Ted, for that feedback. And what do you guys think of this chemistry between Jamie and Victoria? I mean, they don't get a lot of time together in the TARDIS.
No, they have chemistry, and what I find really interesting about Jamie and Victoria is they're both from the past, and having that as having two characters from the past and different periods of the past, but still from the past, is an interesting choice. It's not the one that would naturally occur to me, but they work together as characters, and they have very different personalities. Even though Victoria has spunk, as she shows in this episode. I mean, she's not just a passive screamer. She has some agency. Yeah. The more natural pairing is one we haven't gotten to yet, but will before too long, before too many more cycles with Patrick Troughton. The more natural pairing is Jamie and Zoe. because Zoe is from the future, and having the boy from the past and the girl from the future is a natural pairing. And they both serve as natural extensions in a way of Patrick Troughton's Doctor, because we have companions that contribute things, that serve as agents like mini doctors. Well, as we were talking about earlier, Jamie is kind of the physical agent of the Doctor, and Zoe is the intellectual agent of the Doctor. So we do see things like Zoe knowing how to run the TARDIS and arguing with the Doctor about science and stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Now, there was a special for the 25th anniversary, 30th anniversary, 30 years in the TARDIS. And I believe it was the 30th anniversary. And they were interviewing different staff members or different people, crew members and everything. And Deborah Watling admitted that she had a crush on Fraser Hines. So that might be playing through on screen as well. So
that could be. And apparently he was a heartthrob for a while.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He's got a little Davy Jones thing going on there from the Monkees. So then on our episode 250, The Rings of Akin, I said it. John says on Facebook, now I want to see a running gag where Jimmy and Father Cory drop as many surprise references to this episode as they can, just so Dom has to keep on saying Akin. Ha! Ha! Go right ahead, I say. I've got it now. Anyway, I've been
now we'll have to plot something out.
Yeah, I've been practicing just for this feedback.
Yeah.
And then here's a little bit of a throwback from a new listener who's been going through our back catalog. From episode 196 on Vincent and the Doctor, Lynn sent an email. She said, thank you for stating that depression is not a moral failing or a character flaw, but a disease. As one who suffers from depression, I'm often told the opposite, or else it is implied. It's refreshing to hear someone speak up in support of folks with mental illness struggles instead of speaking against them. This is why I adore this episode of Doctor Who above most others. I'm very glad to have found your podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. And thank you for writing in with that feedback, because it helps other people in the audience to hear that as well, in addition to us saying it. Anyone who implies that depression is a moral failing or a personal failing or something like that is someone who's never experienced it. After my wife died, you better believe I had depression, and it wasn't my fault, and I knew it, but that didn't mean I wasn't really sad. And so when you've experienced depression, it gives you a new perspective on it, and it is not to be dismissed. And I love the Vincent van Gogh episode for the same reasons.
Yeah. And of course, in recent decades, as more and more research has been done into brain chemistry and things like that, how depression actually comes about, it's very clear that it's much more a physical, psychological issue than it is a moral failing. It's things that there are treatments for, there are ways to care for it.
It's simply not a moral failing.
It's not a moral failing at all.
Yes.
Sorry, I wanted to make that clear. It's not a moral failing at all.
Right.
And it's something that if someone is struggling with, there is help out there. There are people who want to help you, at a minimum, learn how to live through it, and at best learn how to get beyond it if you can, and so,
which is often quite possible.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's great feedback, and glad to make sure to get that out there.
Yes, definitely. It cannot be said often enough. Excellent. Well, thank you all for your feedback. We love getting feedback, and I'm sure we're going to get some feedback on this season, and we want to definitely hear from you. If you send audio feedback, I'd definitely love to play that as part of the show. So if you want to record that, you can record it on your phone in the voice memo app. If you're, most smartphones have one of those,
and then share or email it. Email it to Doctor Who at sqpn.com.
Exactly. Yep. So that should do things for us. I want to first take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Doctor Who, including Ken M., Patricia T., George W., Aaron V., and Hisha. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So, what did you think of the Halloween Apocalypse, this first chapter of The Flux, Series 13, for the final season for the 13th Doctor? you can let us know, like I said, by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send an email to doctorwho@sqpn.com. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing Chapter 2, War of the Centaurs. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thanks, Tom.
Father Cory Sticha, thank you as well.
Thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, what's the point of being alive if not to make others happy?